Dad was 17 when Pearl Harbor happened. He joined the Army in 1942 and was trained, I don't know what they trained him with, and sent overseas to Morocco and Italy and France. He was also in Corsica.
What was his reaction to Pearl Harbor?
They were not happy. He was still living at home. He knew that at some point, if it wasn't over right away, that he was going to have to serve. My grandmother worked closely with veterans, and she found out that the draft was coming. And she said, John, go ahead and sign up, because if you're drafted, you're going to have to stay longer, possibly, for the war. He finished his duty after VJ Day. He was discharged in October of '45. He was to be heading to the South Pacific because VE Day had gone. The captain had two routes he could take across the Atlantic. He could take the northern route or he could take the southern route. They were going to go through the Panama Canal to get to the South Pacific. Dad was excited about that because he thought, I'm going to get to go through the Panama Canal. That sounds great. Right after they left port is when they dropped the first atomic bomb. And the captain, he said, this war is going to be over in less than a week. And if I take the southern route, these kids are going to have to go all the way around and add like a week to the trip and be discharged on the west coast. The captain said if I take the northern route, I can get to New York quicker and let these guys off and they can get home easier. At least they'll be on home soil. So Dad didn't get to go through the Panama Canal. Years later, it was after my parents' 53rd anniversary, they went through the Panama Canal. So Dad finally got it done. He was happy about that. No, they never got to Hawaii. Now my mother, she had a boyfriend who was killed on the Arizona. Yeah.
What was your brother's reaction to the
She was probably about 15 or 14 when it happened. They were living on a farm, so it was farm work.
In what state?
Illinois. Mom, after that, when she graduated from high school, which she did at 16, she decided to go to nursing school. So she went to nursing school and she joined the cadet nurses. After she graduated from nursing school, if the war had continued, she would have served overseas in the nursing unit. But the war ended before she graduated. She was down at a cafe, sitting with 3 or 4 of her other nurse friends. This young gentleman walks in, and he came over to the table, and he asked the first one, want to go on a date with me? No. Second one, no. Third one, no. He asked my mother, and she said, okay. 2 months later, they were married. It was my father.
You have sisters and brothers?
I had 2 older brothers. I have a younger sister and a younger brother.
So your mom, though, when she was 15, she had a boyfriend who was killed on the Arizona?
Yeah.
Do you remember his name?
No.
Or how did she find out? Was there like telegrams to the family that he's missing? What was her reaction to that?
I think she was sad. The war touched her at that age. She understood that people were going to lose their lives. Well, Dad, as I said, served in Africa. He was in Morocco, in Marrakesh. Army. And I asked him once, what was it like? And he said, I was too far forward to wear a necktie, but too far back to wear a helmet. He had flat feet. If they drafted him, he might have probably gotten 4F. But by joining they put him in the Signal Corps where he wasn't going to be doing marching and that kind of stuff. Their service kept us free. I'm not talking just about the troops. I'm talking about the entire country, because everybody came together and were doing as much as they could to see that we would win. There was a lot of stuff going on in Europe that the Americans did not know about. They really didn't know about the concentration camps and such, and when they found out about those things, it was like, we've got to stop this. And our allies, the French, the English, or Great Britain, were already in this, and we needed to help them free Europe and the South Seas from the Japanese.
When they're all gone, are you worried that people are going to forget about World War II?
We're forgetting about it now. They're not teaching it in schools. These kids are coming up, you ask them, what did you think of Pearl Harbor? Well, what's Pearl Harbor? Pearl Harbor was the 9/11 of my generation. That's the first time in my generations that people started to understand this is close and it's touching us. Whereas after Pearl Harbor, it was that generation. And they knew that something was going to have to be done. They stepped up. The farmers worked, farming and making sure. My mother talked about rationing during World War II. She lived on a farm for part of it. Of course, they got a little better food. They got the eggs and that kind of stuff, what they were growing. She had some memorabilia, and one of them was an old ration book. I don't know what's happened to that stuff. I wish I knew. Those ladies knew that something had to be done, and they were freeing up men. They worked hard on that. They did not get the recognition for a long time. They had the same problem during World War I. It wasn't just the Rosie the Riveters. It was the people working on the Manhattan Project. It was the people selling war bonds. The people training others. They were part of that greatest generation because they came together, banded together so much. I can't really express it in words. I don't have the words. Their patriotism, their loyalty, their love of country, it united the entire country in a way that had not been for, you still had the North and the South and segregation, but it was the beginning of understanding that the blacks did have a purpose. You had the Tuskegee Air Force, and there were a lot serving in the Navy.
What do you advise families to do that are maybe watching this interview that maybe don't, that maybe they should they ask check their family trees if anybody served?
They should get into the books and read about World War II. Read about the correspondence. Nowadays, the correspondents are out there with the troops almost. Whereas in World War II, they were behind the lines, a lot of them. There are things out there that they can look at. Willie and Joe. And looking through those, you get an idea of what it was like for these guys to serve. There's the one picture that I got a kick out of. Guy's got his helmet on the ground, and it's got water in it, and he's washing up out of that. They use their helmets for whatever they need, because sometimes it was to eat out. Whether it's the VFW, the American Legion, whatever. Get in there so we can serve our veterans. Dad has his ashes in the same niche at Arlington Cemetery as my oldest brother. That's what Dad wanted. And I told him when he asked for that, I said, Dad, I don't know if it can be done, but I will find out. And I said, if they won't let me, if they won't let it, I'll be there one night with a chisel. When we had the service for my father, Mom, of course, was devastated. They'd been married over 55 years. it came time to put the ashes in the niche, which is on the top level of the columbarium. They had a little step thing to get up there. But Mom wasn't going to do that. So I turned to my nephew, and Dad's name was John, and my nephew was Jonathan. And I said, Jonathan, would you please put Grandpa where he needs to be? They were kind enough to allow me to put in a little trinket that Dad had given me when I was in the hospital years ago. So I have the memory of knowing that there's something in there that meant a lot to me about my dad and my brother. After my mother passed away, I took a little bit of her ashes and, don't tell Arlington this, I scattered them in front of the columbarium. Not much, just, not even a handful. My brother was served in Vietnam. He picked up what he thought was his ginger ale, and it wasn't. And he drank it, and he tried to vomit it up, but wasn't totally successful. By the time they got him to the hospital, his esophagus and into his lungs, he lasted only 3 more days. Dad, after my brother had been in Vietnam at least 30 days or whatever, he got him signed up for the VFW. They signed my dad up right after 30 days in Africa. So he was a VFW member before the war was over. I joined the auxiliary when I was 18. At that time, that was the legal age. Mom joined the auxiliary. Oh gosh, they got married in 46. Was probably 46 when Mom joined. Yeah. Anybody that's had anybody served, they appreciate it. The people who have never had someone serve, they don't understand the sacrifices, whether they go to war or not. They don't understand what these troops are doing. I want people to remember that if you don't study history, if you forget history, you're liable to repeat it. And unfortunately, I see that happening today with the divided country as far as politics. And unless we come together, we may end up not liking what happens.